Live.
Welcome back to another edition of the Bulluminati podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Bond. Alongside me, as always, Seth Varnadore and Robert Steeg. We've got a jam-packed episode of the show this evening. I want to shout out Home Field Apparel. They had a great Black Friday through Cyber Monday sale. Guys, if you haven't used them yet, first-time users still getting 15% off with the code DailyStampede at homefieldapparel.com. Some of the most comfortable shirts I've ever owned in my entire life. I think Samantha has worn my shirts of mine from Home Field more than I have. She's a thief. Where I'm talking with the authorities about pressing charges, see if they will stick, see if it will cost me more in the long run than just to kind of let her get away with this. But I mean, Home Field has been a great partner for us, and they're going to be a partner for us through the end of basketball season. So huge shout out to them. Steeg, Seth, you guys both have Home Field shirts that are very, very comfortable, right?
I got this one that I always keep on me. It is my Home Field D2 rep, Colorado School of the Mines. We got Blaster Burrow there, giving a little howdy, folks. That's my go-to. I keep it on my chair 24/7, 365, in case I get a little chilly in the apartment. It's comfortable, keeps me nice and warm. What more could I ask for?
Keeps that thing on him at all times.
All time.
Yeah, great shirts. Awesome. Not only are they soft, but the designs on the shirt are excellent. If you're looking for something outside of USF, why would you? But if you were, there's all kinds of great schools and all kinds of animal mascots and all kinds of fun stuff to look for on there. So it's a great website and a great partner.
Absolutely. And shout out to them forever and always. Let's just jump right into it. Since we last spoke last Thursday, I believe, USF hired a defensive coordinator, Bob Shupe, who's been everywhere for a spell. Some would call that, journeyman. Some would say that's not a great thing. But if you're kind of looking back at where he's been the last few years, it kind of makes a little bit of sense why he's been kind of bouncing around. And we'll just go from end of 2015. He's been a DC for years, but he was at Penn State for 2 years, 14 and 15. And then went to Tennessee for 16 and 17. And that was, if you guys may recall, at the end of the Butch Jones experience in Knoxville, Tennessee there. So wasn't great. And then in 18 and 19, probably had his best years, maybe his coupled his best couple years with Mississippi State under Joe Moorhead. It was only 2 years there because
Joe
Moorhead got fired. And not really based on anything except
fit.
It was a fit issue that didn't pan out. They won that Egg Bowl season, right? Like they won because of the Elijah Moore,
the
Big P.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Because Ole Miss could have kicked the extra point to tie it. The penalty pushed it back, and the kid missed it. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So, it's just some rotten luck on that regard. And he spent the year at Michigan, the pandemic year, and then was a defensive analyst at Miami in 2021 under Manny Diaz. So I get the trepidation. I think the biggest thing for me is he likes to scheme around his personnel, which was maybe an issue under former defensive coordinator Glenn Spencer. Seth, I'll open the floor to you. Thoughts, on the surface, what his hire can be and kind of what you have seen from him, watching SEC football for, a while.
If I remember correctly, he's pretty aggressive. Not afraid to get up in your face. I know that Mississippi State defense he had was really, really good. They also had 3 first-round picks. So I've seen some people say he took a Mississippi State defense. They don't have anybody. They had 3 first-round picks on the defense. So they were pretty good. But to his credit, he used those guys really well, and they were probably the best defense in the country, and they were by a bunch of metrics. So that's good. I think what's interesting about him, obviously the fact that he's bounced around a little bit, but like you said, there is some some extenuating circumstances. Like he went to Penn State because he traveled, I think, with Franklin from Vanderbilt. So he was at Vanderbilt before. Then he went within Penn State, then got probably a little bit more money, maybe at Tennessee, left, and then as you detail kind of what happened from there. But he's had successful defenses at every stop. It's not like he's been fired for having really bad defenses. I don't think that's really been the case anywhere. I know he was on the staff in Michigan and they ended up firing, but he wasn't calling the defense. He was part of the staff, and whatever happened there. But everywhere he's been calling plays, they've had success, and typically I think pretty early in his tenure. So if he can kind of get in there with this influx of talent that I'm sure we're going to talk about, and the guys that are coming back next year and put something good on the field immediately, that's probably what Jeff Scott was looking for. He needs kind of an immediate upgrade, somebody that can hit the ground running, that's done it before, and not just done, calling plays, but has come into new places and put stuff in quickly for immediate success. I think that makes a little bit of sense, even though the name kind of came out of left field a little bit.
Absolutely, and I think you kind of hit it right there. Hit the ground running, and Jeff Scott acknowledged after the Central Florida game, like he doesn't have a lifetime contract here. He needs to start winning, relatively soon. And I think this 2022 season is going to set up for them to. I think they're going to make a bowl game. I think their talent there, the people that they're bringing in, we'll get into the recruiting of this 2022 cycle. That's been transfer heavy as we suspected, and it looks like they're hitting on some guys that they need, and they're hitting the positions that they need, but they need someone, a steady hand, and I don't think Jeff Scott could really risk it with a guy like Danny Verpail or James Rowe, which makes sense, right? I mean, you don't want to – it could be – it's tough to say that this is you need to win season, but you need to show a lot of improvement from, 2 wins season. So it's really, I completely understand Jeff Scott kind of being in this rock and a hard place kind of situation where you're like, shit, man, I really need to put something productive on the field. Do I really want to leave it up to a guy who's never called plays at the FBS level? Do I want to rely that portion of my job security on someone that I'm not sure about? So I completely get that, and I understand. I think Danny Verpail was actually named to the AFCA top 35 under 35 list yesterday or today. So I get the both schools of thought. The up and coming guy, bringing the guy back home, either with James Rowe or Verpail, but I definitely understand why Jeff Scott went the veteran leadership route, because it's still a pretty young staff, regardless of who you're bringing in. So maybe to have a veteran leadership, so to speak, on the defensive side of the ball makes a lot of sense. Steeg, I know you've kind of expressed some concerns would probably be the kind thing, and it wanted to give you a platform to share it and bounce your thoughts, and maybe we can talk through it, or maybe highlight it even more if it makes a little bit more sense than originally thought.
Yeah, right. And to put it bluntly, I think Shupe has obviously a fantastic resume. When it was finally kind of on the hot board that Will Turner posted on 247, I took first off, I thought it said Bob Stoops at first, which I was like, oh shit, really? We're doing this? But when I reread it and then I looked into who he was, I mean, the first concern that people would normally have just on surface level was, the amount of jobs that he's had. And then you kind of look into the who, the what, the when, there, and why it happened. You can kind of understand, as we mentioned, why, he went from basically 6 different jobs in 8 years, which is a concerning statistic. But when you see the success that he's had basically everywhere that he's gone, minus the Butch Jones, 2 seasons there, his resume definitely does back it up. the biggest concern that I have is, the odd kind of path that he took after the Michigan, stint that he had there. And I kind of mentioned it that, you know, uh, listen, it was the COVID year. There was a lot of weird stuff happening. He's like 50 years old. Like, he's an older guy. He's probably a little bit more at risk than, your average coaching staff. And, he kind of just disappeared out of Ann Arbor. I think like about 2 or 3 weeks into the season, someone asked like, "Hey, where's Coach Shupe at? He was a safeties coach. He's not on the field anymore. Like, what's he up to?" And they kind of said like, "Oh, he's tending to personal matters. He's no longer doing on-field duties. He's still performing off-field duties, such as recruiting and schemes and everything like that. But he went from a guy that Michigan was very excited about hiring, and there was a lot of good vibes coming out of that Mississippi State defense that was just absolutely daunting from 2018 and 2019. He was kind of poised to come in as a safeties coach, really focus on fixing that Michigan secondary, and then kind of disappeared after 3 weeks. So that, and then coupled with becoming a defensive analyst. Now, defensive analysts in the ACC and the SEC, like, those guys are, your defensive analysts that happen to find their way into those programs, they're good. Like, it happens at Alabama all the time. It happens at Florida State all the time. It happens at Florida. Like, these analysts aren't analysts. These are coaches who are just not wanting to have the pressure of being an on-the-field coach for a little bit, still want to be around the game and still work. And, there was, again, a lot of excitement out of Miami that, they were bringing in a defensive analyst like Bob Shupe. Like, he had a lot of experience. And for the most part, Miami's defense wasn't god awful this year. It obviously ended up with Manny Diaz and the entire coaching staff getting upended by Mario Cristobal. But, there was some talks of keeping Bob Shupe and making him the defensive coordinator at Miami. And even then once Joe Moorhead got fired out of Mississippi State, there was some talk from players that wanted him to become the head coach. Obviously didn't happen. They bring in a crazy guy like Mike Leach instead. So I don't know. There were some concerns about the path that he's taken, the amount of times he's bounced around from job to job. But at the end of the day, Coach Scott knows that these assistant coaches are never going to be set in stone. Someone's always going to find greener pastures somewhere, especially when the team finds success, and he knows that. He's very much aware. He said it, I think, in like his first 6 weeks of taking the job. He's like, "Yeah, this is my first coaching staff. I'm probably going to have to do this 15 more times, just hiring new guys over and over again." And if Bob Shupe is here, fixes the defense, and gets a new job at Arkansas, I don't know, so be it. They'll probably find a way to get Verpel or Rowe, or maybe they'll promote Sims. Who knows? I'm not going to put too much stock in the future of what Bob Shupe is going to do. I just know right now, if we needed someone to come in, make this defense more aggressive, get more sacks, get more tackles for a loss, and be in your face, this is the hire that they had to make. This is the guy that they should have gotten after, and they did.
Yeah, I completely agree there, Steeg. And I will say, kind of doing some work on my own, kind of uncovering, what happened at Michigan. All I know is from people who've been around the program is he was a bit of a dickhead and got phased out.
Yeah, I was going to say could this just all these short stints be all personality driven?
It could be. And, we've talked about how, defensive guys, they need to be a little bit different. Obviously if you're playing defense and you're hitting, you're already there's a screw loose already, but for defensive coaches, at least, the Tom Allen, high intensity kind of in your face, but not crossing that line. It's a really tough thing to do. And sometimes coaches just kind of wear out their welcome. And that makes a lot of sense when you look at what has happened. And as you know, I know he was a head coach at Columbia for 4 seasons. I know or 3 seasons. I know it's in the Ivy League, but it's interesting after all of these different stops where he's actually had success, he never really came up in conversation for another head coaching job. I'm not saying it could just be a personality thing and you kind of wear out your welcome, but you leave a lot of these places in better shape than where you started. And that is fine. If this is just another feather in his cap, if he's the fixer, that it's perfectly fine. But I think we need to be able to present everything, right? We don't want to, we're not running PR for USF, even though some people may think we do, but we need to be able to present everything in all, the warts and all of everything that's kind of comes with this hire. And the Michigan thing definitely does stand out as let's see what's going on here first before, anything happens. And I fully trust Michael Kelly and Jeff Scott that they did their due diligence on this. I mean, he left Penn State. He got fired, forced out. There was a lawsuit, a countersuit, and they settled. So, I mean, he left Penn State in not great terms, after coming over with James Franklin from Vanderbilt. So it's a delicate balance, and it's something that we're going to need to, I wouldn't say keep a close eye on, but understand, turn over some of these rocks and make sure that, everything's on their P's and Q's, and we're not kind of brushing anything under the rug that would not look great on the university's behalf. And I don't think there is anything that really screams out, oh man, this was a really bad hire. I think it may just be a personality thing, and maybe it works for a year, and you see it with hockey coaches, you see it with soccer coaches in the pros. Like you can get really, really hot under one coach, and then for one season and a half, and then you just kind of tune them out because their style, it wears on you. And I think John Tortorella is probably a really good example in the NHL, where he's an intense dude and it works for a while, but then it kind of gets old and it gets frustrating, and you've got to get a new voice in there. So I understand that. So
that's been the rap for like Todd Grant, though.
Right.
That he's great the first year. He's a new voice. He's great. And then the second year, it's all right. And then the third year, they're like, okay, I'm tired of this guy yelling at me. Then the fourth year, they're like, all right, we're going to be firing this dude. And that's just how some guys are. He's like the wolf from Pulp Fiction. He just comes in. He's going to come in and do a quick fix, and then he'll be out.
Listen, that's all he's got to do.
I think that is a consideration. If he comes in, kind of provides some stability for the defense, if it's a guy like, if Ernie Sims did a great job in the UCF game, and you feel good about him, but you're not quite ready, well, maybe now give him a different defense to learn, a different mentor, and maybe by the time Shupe's ready to leave, or they're ready for him to leave, now he's ready to promote, which you may have to do to keep him from going and being a coach at some other schools, because he seems like he's going to be a hot commodity. So that could be part of the thinking too. I think they would, with any of the guys, it sounded like we're up for it. I thought the two, Verpel and Rowe, would have been good hires. Him coming in here, I think it's a good hire, and he may just be kind of grooming Sims to kind of take over. So
right. And Bill, man, we're going to try our best to talk you off the ledge. I assure you that between now and September 3rd, 2022, we're going to do our best to really hammer just stuff down that optimism. But listen, if USF's defense wasn't absolutely god-awful atrocious and they were just bad, they win 5 games this year. No doubt in my mind. So, right, like, I mean, the offense sputtered in spots, in spurts, but if they just had just a bad defense, and I'm not talking, 85 Bears, I'm not talking, the first half of 2017 defense or the 15 defense, right? Just bad. If you're just bad, you win 5 games.
I'm adamant that if we had a competent defense, we may upset Cincinnati. Like if they get 1 or 2 stops, like we're in it in that game. Like that's all they have to do is, like, if he comes in and takes us from number 128 to fucking like
100. I'll take 100. I think you may win 4 games if you just go from 128 to 100. We're not asking to break triple digits here.
And he cashes that check and says, "Fuck y'all, I'm out." Like, Great. Thanks for the help in getting us out of the Glenn Spencer mess. And like, I mean, we can harp on it all day, and we'll probably harp on it all season. And I'm excited to see what he brings in the spring, and I think that's refreshing because I felt like with Glenn Spencer, it was kind of like, well, yeah, let's see how many times we can blitz, or we can rush 3 and get pressure and see if that can work. But ultimately, it's just let's see what they come up with, and defensive coordinators are either dickheads or crackheads, and we stumbled upon the dickhead hire. So we'll see what happens.
That's extreme.
It's one or the other. Is that it? There's no in between.
There's very little successful defensive coordinators in between.
I don't know how scientific that is.
There's either dickheads, excessive sweaters, or crackheads. I think that's those are the 3 options.
Oh Lord!
Oh God, and that makes a lot of sense. I will say this for Bob Shupe here, and I think it was in 2018. He kind of gave the interview when he got to Mississippi State that he uses the spring ball, those 15 practices during spring, to figure out what his personnel is. And that's what we talked about at the top here. He fits his scheme around the personnel. So he wants to be able to see, at least this is what he said when he took the Mississippi State job, was I want to be able to see what my guys can do, see if they can do 3 or 4 things. Each player can do 3 or 4 things positively, and then just put them in the best position to succeed. And that's what you want to hear, because that's not what happened for the last 2 years under Glenn Spencer. It was, this is the system, figure it out yourself.
And they also may be bringing in a whole new starting defense through the transfer portal, it seems like. I mean, that's also going to probably be helpful, that your depth is going to be so much better, because you may have guys that were starting for you last year that are backups now. And it seems like that will be helpful too. But I think what he might want to do before spring practice, just in case something crazy happens, watch the film from the previous year. Just in case. You might want to do that. It'll help. I thought that was a joke, and he's sticking to those guns, that he did not watch the film.
I mean, good. I mean, good on you, Jeff.
Lie to the players, but do it. I mean, you can't not watch the film. Holy cow.
But
the biggest blessing that Coach Scott ever had was not watching that film, because good God, that was going to be terrible and horrible. Dumb. But like, I mean, for his own mental sake, but like also like, damn, dude, you really should have known that.
We had to watch it. Well, I mean, after
Bulluminati film room,
when the spring got canceled, I may cut on a couple games or two just in case. I mean, come on, dude. Like,
just to see what I'm working with. If I don't have a spring, at least
give me like, if you don't want, I don't know what you're doing if you don't watch the film. And I hired these coaches. I didn't know what kind of players I had. All right, I mean, that's the first time, a rookie mistake. But oh my Lord,
the
change that line by now.
The thought was there. I appreciate the thought.
Well, just lie to the players. Tell the players you didn't watch it, and be like, "Oh my gosh, we've got to get some more guys in the portal."
Yeah, you just got to be really mindful. Like when you get pissed off at them, like, "Well, I saw the game in 2019." You can't bring it up. Like, what are you talking about, Coach? I thought you said you didn't watch the film. I forgot. My bad. Hey, because you kind of mentioned the recruiting and bringing in a whole slew of guys, I do want to at least say this for the coaching aspect, which will lead into recruiting. It looks like for now, and I repeat, for now, USF has dodged a bullet of someone poaching Ernie Sims, because Florida State hired Randy Shannon as their linebackers coach.
He's got to punch off USF on his ticket, and he's got everybody in the state of Florida, I think.
And
it's a 3 foot-long sub.
And it's, oh man, my brother, his best friend, her husband is a huge Florida State fan, and we'll talk, about football. And he sent me a message. He's like, "So what are your thoughts on Ernie Sims as a coach and recruiter?" And I sent him one where I said terrible, and then parentheses I put saying this to protect my feelings when he leaves. He's like, "Oh, good. I just really want a good recruiter." Our last guy was a decent coach, but terrible on the trail. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be annoyed when he leaves." I really think what Ernie Sims did in 5 days for the Central Florida game is not going to be forgotten by a lot of people. Just what he was able to do, and he's like, man, you don't have to worry about it. Looks like we've hired Randy Shannon. He goes, anytime you can promote a 55-year-old retread who hasn't been part of a good defense in a decade, you have to do it.
Easy.
Yeah, it's an easy decision.
He's got recruiting ties down to Miami. Come on.
Exactly. It really helped him at Central Florida.
Are they still
really
using that line
Miami.
for him? I feel like people have said the same thing about Randy Shannon being a good recruit out of Miami for the past 8 years.
You know what,
he hasn't recruited a kid out of Miami in 10 years.
You know what? I went and saw Randy Shannon speak at a coach's clinic when I was still playing. My brother was coaching. I just I want to go and hear him. And I heard him talk at a coach's clinic. They had the whole Miami defense, and that had to be probably 2006, maybe. He was good. He was on it. Now that was a long time ago, and the game's changed a little bit, but he was good. He's been a good coach in the past, but he's kind of bouncing around now.
Yeah. So at least it seems for now that we've dodged that bullet, because Ernie Sims is a freaking dude, and at Praying for Redemption, players love Sims. Yeah, I mean, it shows.
I think maybe he's like DC in waiting.
You know what? Maybe, and I think Steve, you said it when we were discussing Shupe, grooming Sims to be the next guy, the guy. It's a real distinct possibility, because Ernie Sims has got a bright future, and what he's been able to accomplish, just getting into the coaching profession, going from an analyst, a GA, to a position coach, to being able to call a game within 3 years it's damn impressive, and not a lot of people are able to pull that off. So kudos to him. And let's get into recruiting. There's been some scuttlebutt. There's been some commitments. There's been some controversy. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts, as we're 1 week, right? It's the 15th, right?
Yeah, 1 week.
1 week away from early signing day, and it could be one of the last early signing days if some of the coaches in the NCAA kind of get their way, and it makes a lot of sense. I think this absolute tangent, right, is it was good in theory, the early signing period, but with the amount of movement that has happened, it's not. Those transition year classes have been kind of a bust for a lot of schools. If you look back, and
if you look at Florida right now, they just don't even care.
They're hemorrhaging.
They don't. He just doesn't care. He's like, I think he's telling guys, I want to get to know you. You need to get to know me. Wait till late signing period. And everyone's like, no, we're not doing this. Like, all right, see ya. Because he knows it doesn't. This first one doesn't really matter. I'm interested in the proposal that some people said move it, the first one, to August, move it before the season. That's something I've thought, and I thought would be good for the kids that know where they're going to go, to let them just get it out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways to do that already. You can sign
grant aids or whatever.
Yeah, you can do it already technically, but I think a lot of the kids are just more. The kids that are qualified and ready to go and know where they want to go, let them sign. And then if a coach gets fired, let them out of it. Or a coach leaves, let them out of it. And I think that would make everything so much easier. So, but yeah, it seems like it's going to move, because it's just it's so detrimental. Mm-hmm. If a coach leaves, you have to fire a coach, you're basically done. So,
yeah. I mean, you guys, that 2019 class is not ideal.
Broken.
It's not ideal, but there'll be some pieces. But looking back at Charlie's first year, that transition class between Willie's final recruiting season in 2016 to that 2017 class, not a lot of impact players in that 2017 class still on the roster. So it's, in theory, it was supposed to work really well, and you don't know what you don't know, and people didn't know how this would affect teams who are firing coaches, who are, coaches who are leaving for better jobs. And now I think there's enough data points to suggest maybe we need to move it back, maybe do an August and February thing, as you're mentioning there, Seth, or maybe just move it to January or something. I've heard January is just the, move up the February signing period to January and just have it, that's it, and call it a day. I get the schools of thought here for both, but I love the early signing period because you're kind of, these guys are locked in, but also you get these guys to sign and then there's still coaching movement well into January. So you're like, well, shit. Tom Allen didn't leave until January of 16. So it's really tough for these kids who sign, like, okay, my position coach is going to be here, my head coach is going to be here, and then they're not there when January workouts start. And you're like, well, now I'm stuck. And you can preach all you want about players not commit to a school, not to a coach, but you're not building a relationship with the mass comm building.
No.
No one can, everybody has everything. It's the personal relationships that you're building with these coaches, and it's really tough to just rip away the coach that you've talked to probably every day for a year, outside the dead periods. And right, and then it's like, all right, well, you still have to play at this school, even though the guy that you've been talking to for the last year is gone.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It's a tough sell for any 18, 17-year-old kid to do that. But let's transition into this 2022 class. We're a week away. Steeg, there's been a lot of movement already. USF is already number one in something. Give us yeah, here we go. Larry D, how much stake do you put into the 24/7 listing the Bulls as the number one transfer class? Let's open the floor.
Right now, this was the first iteration of it, and obviously we're still in the early stages of the transfer season, right? There's still, 84 teams that are going to be playing in a bowl game. So you still have to take into account the attrition that you're going to see. You're going to see probably more attrition after those games. There are some guys who probably want to get a little bit more last-second film, potentially, in a bowl game or something like that. So, the way I take recruiting rankings is, they're nice to look at during the season, but until ink hits paper and paper gets put into a fax machine and then you dust it off in the old office, I don't really take much stock into it until it's all final. I think it's a really good sign of Jeff Scott's mantra of, get these guys early and get them set. That's the biggest thing for Jeff Scott, and that's his big philosophy is when you're ready, let's get it done. Let's commit. Let's, not fuck around and not, court other offers or anything like that. It's just you and me, very monogamous relationship kind of status. So I think it's good to get, early the number one class. I think that's going to pay its dividends. I don't suspect that they're going to stay number one, but they'll stay in like the top 25 most likely because they got some good talent coming into the program right now. There's still some hot names that are going to, sway the rankings quite a bit. The biggest one is going to be Miles Frazier, the offensive tackle from FIU. If you have not seen his name, I don't know who you follow on Twitter because that guy has picked up an offer from quite literally every Power 5 program at this point. He is an All-American, or first-team All-American offensive line, and he's making his way. So I think right now USF is doing the smart thing, which is putting themselves in win now mode and getting these guys who have had experience in Division I programs, are plug and play and are ready to go. Because if they were, say, number one in like the American for just high school recruiting, most of those high school recruits aren't going to play in their freshman year. It happens every single year. We saw a lot of guys who came in really hot in the 2021 class. The biggest example was Jordan Blackman. He's a guy that was being courted by SEC schools and ACC schools and Big Ten schools, and he had all the offers that you could have asked for, but we don't see him on the field because he's not ready. He's still, got to work out in the weight room, got to get some size, got to grow, got to learn and everything. But when you bring a guy in like Clyde Pender, like Amaris Brown, like James Ash and Nick Baggs, these guys that have been in programs, been in Division I weight rooms and are ready to go and hungry, that's where you're going to get your dividends from. And I think that's, SMU did something similar like 3 or 4 years ago. I would be shocked if they didn't have like the number one transfer class like 2 years ago or something when they took Tanner Mordecai. So all power to them. this is the way that USF is going to start succeeding is by, going all in on the transfer portal. You got the free year. This one-time eligibility waiver is still good to go. You abuse the shit out of that, because next year and the year after, you're not going to get that leniency. You're going to have those guys sit. So you're going to have to, recoup in the high school or the JUCO circuit. So I love what they've done. This could not have been better. Start, and they're not done by any stretch of the imagination either.
They've brought in some really good players, but isn't them being number one a function of quantity too?
Yes.
They've brought in so many more than it's not like that's what I don't want people to get too. I think they're bringing in a bunch of good players, but don't get crazy overexcited. Part of it is because there's like 7 or 8 of them, right? It's like there's a lot. I think there's some that haven't been ranked.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look, I think USF brought in 6 and they have 27 points or however it really kind of shakes out. And then I think Michigan State has brought in 2 and they're at like 21 points, something like that. And the transfer rating discrepancy is like USF's average commit is like around a 0.81 and Michigan State's 2 is like around a 0.89. So you really, it's the same thing with high school recruiting. Like you see these guys, a lot of teams, even within the American, they'll sign big classes and they'll have higher points, which is where you'll get the higher rating. I think USF's been kind of hit with this as well, where they're not as high up, but if you actually look at the average star rating, it's higher than what their point total is. So you've got to really, context matters in all cases. And this is another one. I think they're bringing in a lot of impact players for this 2022 season, but don't get caught up about the raw number. Right. And I think that's something to be mindful of as well. And Steve, to your point, I think it was Jamie in Slack who basically said, the last time a school brought in 12 impact freshman players will be the first time. And it's right. And this 2021 class that we brought in, or 2021 class that we brought in, 4 of the 17 high school guys saw action. Now I get you got Tim McLean and Jimmy Horn out of it, but the other 2 was Jalen Herring, who saw limited action, and Andrew Stokes. So there's a real, you're not going to see a bunch of freshman guys see the playing field and on a winning team.
How many freshmen play for Alabama? Like true freshmen play for Alabama? Like think about it.
Like
how many?
It ain't many.
It's not 10. There's not 10 starting true freshmen in Alabama. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get that many guys that can come and play right away, but going to get grown men, that usually helps.
Right.
And then I think, the transfer, because we have a comment about
the ratings.
Transfer rating. They're different, right? They're kind of a separate thing. They re-rank them from where they're at high school. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing it last year with some guys, some of the big name guys that transferred. They kind of re-ranked them,
and it makes a lot of sense to do that, right, Steve? For my understanding, at least, or my thought, maybe it's not the right thought, is you're transferring for a reason. Either you're getting better or you're getting worse. You're not staying the same. So I get a lot of these guys maybe drop in ranking because they're transferring out for some reason. They haven't seen the field, other issues. So that's going to affect their transfer rating, especially if the last time you've really put any game film on is your senior year of high school. So it's really tough to kind of judge these guys based on, 2 years ago when they were, eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast instead of, actually having like a real meal for breakfast in college. So it's really tough to delineate between the two.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it was one of those things that I've been clamoring to Will Turner about for basically a year and a half is, I want there to be a way that we can recognize, these transfers in each class, but not necessarily going off their high school ratings. We all know a 4-star out of high school and a 5-star out of high school that, goes to a program, plays a little bit, and then goes to what we would assume to be a Power 5 program and then doesn't play well, usually they're no longer that 4-star, 5-star rating that we all thought they would be. But there is those intangible things that you can still kind of harp on when you say, hey, we took a 4-star in Clyde Pender. That's really good. He was really good out of high school at doing this. He went to a Division I weight room. He didn't get the right playing time. And, no credit to UNC and Mac Brown for how they tried to utilize Clyde Pender this past year. But, that's stuff you got to take into account is, typically when we do, and this goes across the board in Group of 5, typically when you do get a Power 5 to Group of 5 transfer, it's usually because that player did not hit those expectations that they had at that previous stop. And I think someone brought up, Stacey Kirby as an example. When you look at Stacey Kirby's numbers for the 4 years he was here, he had pretty all right numbers. He got a few sacks here and there. He probably had better numbers than Clyde Pender did in his 2 seasons at UNC. But you have to take that into account when you go into the transfer portal. Like, hey, Stacey Kirby has 12 sacks and 13 tackles for loss. Like, this guy could be an asset to a team. So, I do appreciate the fact that we have rankings and we can actually start to recognize these transfers as, recruiting classes. But again, it's so arbitrary, and especially with 3-star, like, I don't know who they have ranked as like a 5-star. I think it's still Quinn Ewers, the quarterback from Ohio State. I don't know how you can categorize these transfers as anything other than like, a 3-star or a 5-star, really. Like, if you're a 4-star, that's just like a fringe thing at this point. Yeah, and I think overall right now, Daniel, I think you're harping on it as well, which is what I was gonna get at. The Pro Football Focus ratings, those are gonna be kind of, probably more truth to the matter. I think you can ignore certain intangible qualities, but you can't really get rid of game focus like that. So I think the way that they're doing it is good.
I don't believe in Pro Football Focus.
I do.
They don't know what they're running. How can you grade somebody if you don't know what they're running?
It's really tough. I was one of the charters for PFF for like 2 months. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and trying to get it right without knowing, as Seth, you mentioned, what they're running. It's really, really tough.
Sorry, one more thing before I forget.
Yeah.
Scott's bringing it up, and it's a good point. The big part about getting these guys like James Ash and Clyde Pender and Amaris Brown to come back to USF is not just for their impact on the field and the plug and play, but you are going to be damned to know that any high-profile recruit in the 10th Bay area that goes on an official visit with USF and has to stay at USF's campus is going to be staying with Clyde Pender, James Ash, and Amaris Brown, and all these guys from the 10th Bay area that they recruited initially. Because to have that kind of conversation with someone saying like, hey, I got wooed by that Power 5 interest. My name's Clyde Pender. I went to UNC when I was promised to get playing time my freshman year, which is what they're probably going to tell these high school seniors. I didn't get it. I was lied to. And so having those guys around the program right now is going to pay its dividends. And if we can get KJ Sales to come back and be a mentor on this program as well, and maybe a speaker for the team for high school recruiting, that'd be even better. Because I do agree, and we got into a little Twitter spat about it earlier. I wish USF would be able to kind of like rope off the 10th Bay area, but that's impossible right now. It is literally impossible for them to just offer all this top talent and be able to fill a class. They would have maybe 4 guys this year out of this recruiting class out of high school if they just did high school recruiting, and like 3 of those would not be Division I guys.
Yeah, and it's really tough. I think Chris Torello at Spectrum, he did a story. I think it came out today or last night during their show about the offensive lineman from I want to say Clearwater, who's going to Ole Miss. You're not getting those guys to stay home. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not how this world works. All right, and the guy that actually stays in Tampa from high school are the exception, not the rule. USF has historically done so much better at bringing these guys back to Tampa when they they go up north and they're like, oh shit, it's really cold in December. I don't like playing football in November. Like that Bills Patriots Monday Night Football game. Real man football? Absolutely fucking not. No one wants to play football in that cold of weather where you really like the Patriots threw the ball 3 times because they couldn't throw the ball. Like no one wants to do that. No, like you hear, I think it was Damian Woody who played for the Patriots for years and was a really good offensive lineman. He goes, no, cut that shit out. Nobody likes playing in the cold. It's like wrecking your body. It's like being in a car accident, but even worse. You feel like your bones are breaking every time you hit someone in those cold weather games. And it's a lesson and experience that these guys have to learn. Like, oh man, I had it really good back in Florida and Tampa. And that's why you're seeing a lot of guys transfer out. And I think what you're seeing as well is the big 3 of Florida State, Miami, they're not keeping their high. You're not keeping the blue chippers in the state of Florida anymore either. You've got Alabama, Clemson, Texas, UNC, USC is coming in now with Lincoln Riley. All the bigger schools, they're poaching the top talent from Florida. So now the guys that maybe would have thought about staying in Tampa, staying with you, are now I've got the opportunity because the blue chippers aren't staying in Florida. I can be that guy at one of the big Florida schools. So it's all kind of a sliding doors kind of thing where you've got to recalibrate your expectations.
I played, I went for a year. I played in West Virginia, and there was like 3 or 4 other Florida kids on the teams that were my buddies, and it got in like the 40s, and everyone up in West Virginia, this is football weather. My buddy came out to practice with a hoodie on under his pads and then sweatpants underneath his football pants, and it looked like a Clydesdale because the sweatpants would like bow out after the knee pad. It was not football weather. It was very cold.
Like if I have to wear a scuba suit to stay warm during a football game, I don't want to do that. I don't know if you guys saw this, that Tom Brady always wore scuba suit. He wore a freaking scuba suit in cold weather games, passed it on to Brian Hoyer, who passed it on to Mac Jones. Like, I don't want to wear a scuba suit in the winter when I'm not in the water.
Jay Cutler was talking about that too. Got it from Brady, the scuba suit.
Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't want to do that. It is 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night in Florida in December, and it's 72 degrees outside. Sign me up.
That's football weather.
That is football weather. When it peaks at like 79, 80 degrees at noon or 2 o'clock in Florida in December, that's football weather. You can deal with that.
A little nip in the air for playoff time in high school football.
But that's it.
That's playoff.
There's a reason why Tom Brady's in Tampa now. I mean, the weather's great. So, but for the high school kids who have always been in Tampa, it's always going to be tougher to make them realize out of high school when you've got bigger names calling you to just stay home. It's really tough, and I get it. Like, I was thinking about this today on the way to work. Like, I lived in Tampa. I went to USF. I didn't have the dorm room life. I lived at home. Right. And I always thought about, well, if I went somewhere else, I would have had a different college experience. And I think that's part of growing up. Maybe it's just something I missed, right? Not having that college experience of living in the dorm. Like, I made one friend in college, and I'm perfectly fine with that because I still talk to the friends I grew up with when I was like 5. So I'm lucky in that regard. So it's a way to, I don't know, just get a different experience, get a different point of view as you're growing up as 17, 18-year-old kids. Maybe your parents you really got you under your thumb and you want to get out of there for a little bit. It makes a lot of sense. You don't know all the situations, but if I get it.
It all makes sense, and so you got to walk to January workouts in the morning, and it's 10 degrees.
Yeah,
then it makes a lot less sense.
You're dressed as the little brother from A Christmas Story. Like, that's just not. That's not appealing. It's not appealing, right? So it's tough. And looking back on this 2021 class, they brought in 9 transfers from D1 schools only 2 didn't contribute. Xander Yarbrough never really made it to USF, and then Jamari Stewart, who has subsequently transferred back out due to injury, just never saw the field. But to Marcus Gregory, who is in the portal again, he had, I think, 9 or 11 catches. Jared Mangum, we know what he did. Yusuf Terry, Christian Williams, Matthew Hill, and Will Jones would have been the starter if he hadn't torn his ACL and thrown 2 players under the bus.
Basically. So weird thing about Marcus Gregory, he wasn't on scholarship.
That is so weird.
I was
like, are we sure on that?
So in insider trade secret here, usually commits that go on scholarship will get the official commitment graphic and everything when they sign. That's how you can kind of tell who's a walk on and who's really who they're dedicating man hour to do those things. He didn't have one, and we never kind of noticed because we were just like, oh, that's cool, 4-star wide receiver transfer from Ole Miss. We were kind of starstruck at that. Yeah, it wasn't on scholarship.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, everyone else that we've seen transfer wise in this year has, been on scholarship. So I think we're set there. But yeah, it was very strange. And so I mean, and I've been trying. I gave up trying to find out how many open spots they have left for this class. Because fuck.
I throw your hands up in the air, especially because they've had guys transfer out. Now you can sign 35 or 32.
Yeah, everyone
like that.
Everyone that goes out, you can have another one coming back in, right?
Yeah, and a few people have asked me, and they're like, "Oh, how many more do you think they're going to sign?" And I'm guessing that right now they will sign. Now they just signed Lil John, 2 more guys, I think, before early signing day. I think they have 2 more scholarships open, but I mean. Fuck. And then try to figure out who's the senior, who's junior, who's their classifications. I was talking with Joe Robeck, who does the NCAA preview. He was like, does anyone know if schools are actually keeping track of classes? And I was like, I can tell you for damn certain USF isn't, because their online roster and then their depth chart had everyone with different classes. There was not a single. I mean, if you were a true freshman, you were a true freshman, but that was about it. I think Andrew Mims was listed as a grad student, but his online roster said he was a junior. So, good luck to all those people who have to guess who's on the roster right now, because I don't even know who's graduated from USF.
I'll look at the roster on September 3rd, and I'll be like, oh, he's okay. He's still on the roster. That's good. Good for him. It's really at that
spring ball. That's when you find out. Maybe.
It only took until Bob Shupe got hired before they removed Glenn Spencer off the website. It's
like Indiana Jones. You had to take one old white guy out and replace him real quick with another one.
Yeah.
They don't want the boulder to come down.
Do they weigh about the same?
I think so.
Honestly, yeah. I was going to say something I shouldn't have, but.
What about no, never mind. I'm not going to ask you to do an Indiana Jones impression.
No, God, no.
Other news, some other news relevant to USF football interest. There was a meeting. Was it yesterday, Steeg? There was a meeting?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were talking about Brian Battie being an All-American in kick.
Well, there's that, too.
But that just dropped. Yeah, on campus, they did the Board of Trustees meeting the other day. That was pretty neat. I got to listen to that. I felt like a real Andy Taylor 6 for a second there, trying to type out, Twitter notes and everything like that. But yeah, they did a little, Michael Kelly and Jay Stroman did a little presentation on what they've done with the on-campus stadium and the plans and everything like that. To go along with the actual start of the construction of the indoor performance facility. Which, by the way, they waited until the season was done because the players needed to use the field to practice. So there was people that were upset that they waited to build it or to start building it. And I was like, they still have to fucking practice during the season, right? They can't just, be like, all right, it's time to start constructing. But
where are the specialists going to practice if you take away the turf field?
Just do the
That's-
exterior walls.
Yeah, just start building that
You
up.
guys practice on the inside. We'll just do the outside first.
Just give us the walls. Just put up the walls by now. But if you haven't seen it already, or if you've been living under a rock, a Twitter account name, what is it? The Live Oak, Live Oak USF.
Absolutely, straight up, absolutely clutch yesterday while I was at work. They put little snippets of the Microsoft Teams call. It's basically the meeting of the minds for the board of trustees meeting. They put clips. So shout out to the Live Oak on that one. Absolutely great job by them. I don't even know who. If you know who they are, please let me know so I can shout them out properly, because they were absolutely clutch throughout yesterday morning and throughout the rest of the day, providing some of those sound bites and being able to watch it. I have searched for that link to the video. Cannot find it. Maybe I'm just really bad at Googling. It could be that, but I could not find the full video that I've tried to watch since yesterday. Could not find it. So if anyone has that as well, hit my line. Hit my line. God, I hope they're not open.
No, I'm probably not. You can probably tip Nate though. Ask him for the DMs though. But yeah, Live Oak, fantastic follow if you haven't already. Relatively new to the Twitter scene, have no idea who it is, but they're doing a great job. He kind of gave like the snippets and summaries. They. But essentially, Michael Kelly kind of presented where they're at in the process of building that on-campus stadium and what they're wanting to do, what the board of trustees to do once they have the new president in the position. This is not priority number one, but basically like priority number two of the new president is to build this on-campus stadium. And that was agreed upon by the board of trustees, which is massive to hear. Will Weatherford is doing a great job of headstronging that as well. The quick rundown is that they are putting together the committee to basically to refresh the feasibility study, as well as create 4 subcommittees on different aspects of the project itself. So the location and the price of it is one committee, the marketing and communications of it, the legal, and then I think the actual a fundraising subcommittee as well. So they're going to basically, project it all out, get it, nice and pretty and clean. And so when the new president is, installed and, signs, her name on the plaque or whatever they do to install a president, the second thing that they're going to sign is probably that on-campus stadium. They have it set right now that they want it to begin by June 30th, which is also the date that they want to finish the construction of the indoor performance facility. So that'll be neat if we can knock 2 birds out with one stone on that day. And then ultimately they listed 5 locations to build it. 4 that were known, the Fowler Fields, near the track stadium, and then I think in the north east part. The 5th one is the new one. Nate, I think you're about to talk about that one.
Yeah, so there's the 5 locations, right? It's the southwest corner of campus near Bruceby Downs and Fowler, which is what is that?
I wish we had the map up.
Like,
we should probably pull the map up.
Oh, Seth, could you pull up a map? So I believe it's kind of where the botanical gardens are. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm terrible with directions, so I just want to make sure that is there. There's the intramural fields, which are right next to the JP residence halls, which I played IMs. Never once did I play on those fields, so I get it. They look kind of run down and kind of shoddy. I did like the other IM fields, the Sycamore fields. Then there's the Mosey site. I think it's sure you got to buy the land. You don't own the land.
You got to keep the recycle source though.
Yeah. So there's internal talks within the Daily Stampede to turn the recycle source into a recyclable. You get it?
Does this work?
That works. Let's see if we can zoom in real quick.
That might be too much.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah. So kind of southwest corner, kind of where the Bruceby Downs and Fowler area is. kind of by the Botanical Gardens. And then the IM fields next to JP, which is kind of to the, I think it's right here, to the somewhere around there. I'm so bad at this doing this live and in person, but you guys get it. You guys know the campus, and then the Fowler Fields, which it's where they have a lot of like other IMs that go on there. As
and
well,
the band practices there.
Yeah, so that's also an option. Typically bands, like big time bands, have their own practice fields. They could just use the stadium, but it seems like they may have to find a new place to practice. And then the Sycamore Fields, which is the nearest to the athletics district, which is where USF initially started practicing in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the options. Michael Kelly was asked price tag because everything comes with a price tag, and he estimated $250 million to $400 million. Where that money is coming from, your guess is as good as mine. I think they will be heavy kickback and pushback from students if they're asked to pay more to get the stadium built. I think this may have to be a privately funded through the foundation, kind of bonded out and kind of do it that route instead of having students pay for it when they're already really subsidizing the athletic department already. So there is that. Hey, Connor, you're saying band could use the indoor practice facility? Absolutely, they could. Why not?
Everyone can use it.
They just got to make sure that the timings and the practices don't congeal. But yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they could go somewhere else. You can go practice the Botanical Gardens. I'm sure the bees and the butterflies and whatever. I still have never been to the Botanical Gardens. I'll be perfectly honest. I've lived in Tampa for 26 years. I went to USF for 4, never stepped foot near it. I couldn't even tell you where the entrance is. Are we sure it even exists?
Schrodinger's Botanical Garden.
With regards to financing, I think the wizard is saying the debt is super cheap right now. Like debt is really, really cheap.
Yeah.
So a good time to start a project if you're looking to take on debt to finance it.
Yep. Unfortunately, USF doesn't have a hospital like the University of Miami where they can just absolutely bankroll everything because they are just making money hand over fist during a pandemic. So good bully for Miami to be able to fire Manny Diaz and get the Clemson AD and Mario and really invest in their athletic department because they've really crushed it over the last year. And being so flippant about it is the unmitigated gall for the reason why Miami is able to not be so cash strapped is the most Miami thing ever. If we're being perfectly honest, it really is in line with everything that they've stood for the last 40 years.
That and them telling media not to ask Mario about the hiring process was just, it was perfect. I was like,
fantastic.
If I'm media, that's the first thing I'm asking. Like, hey Mario, what was the first conversation? About when was that happening at?
Would you say October, before or after October 15th?
Oh Lordy.
Oh man. And Steve, as you mentioned, they're one of the committee's initial steps here per the meeting was they're going to review and refresh the feasibility study that was completed in 2018, update that to assess the scope, cost, location, everything. And, $250 million is still really a lot of money. And that's on the cheaper side of things. I think the least you want to do is what Colorado State did in that stadium. I think that the big hiccup here for a lot of USF fans who have been, they were only subjected to like one season of bleacher seating at Tampa Stadium is that those seatbacks are vital. And I get the thought of, a lot of colleges have these bleacher seatings, and you just buy the little seatbacks and you have them there for the season ticket holders, or you can bring your own in. USF fans have been treated like royalty for 25 years at Ray J, right? So that's going to be the where maybe some of the cost prohibitive things kind of come in. The suites are really nice at Ray J. You've got to be able to do that. Are they going to bring a pirate ship in? I don't know. I like how much of a home field do you want to be in this new stadium? Do you need a pirate ship? Maybe just for fun, and maybe be able to actually fire off the cannons just because it's yours.
Just once. That's all I want.
So there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's 4 subcommittees for the scope and budget, the revenue and financing model, creating communication and marketing plans, and coordinating the related legal issues. And I think there may be some legal issues, kind of taking up the green if it is the botanical gardens, taking up that green space. Where are you going to put it? It's why the Claw has survived for so long. It's because it's part of USF's green space. If they take away the Claw and build apartments, they've got to replace that with something else. So whereabouts on this USF footprint can you replace that green space, that greenery? So that's another hurdle that you need to be able to jump through. I know there's been talks about moving the Claw or building apartments there. I think it's kind of still in the process of figuring that out as well. So it's all of these legal hurdles that you'll have to deal with as part of building a stadium. And here on this blog, we were very, very strong detractors of building an on-campus stadium before we got an indoor facility. And now that first hurdle has been set, I completely understand why the next thing, all right, let's get the on-campus stadium. But let's do the first thing right, because if you don't do the indoor facility right, if you have a 90-yard field for some reason, some school, in Florida maybe wanted to just do a 90-yard field instead of the full one. I don't know why any SEC school would ever do that for any reason whatsoever, but they did. You want to make sure you do that correctly, and I think they will. And then the next step is the OCS, and it's the next right step. I don't think it solves the attendance issues. You see the attendance at men's basketball at the Yingling Center. You have to have a good product for people to show up, even if you're 100 yards away. So this is not a build it and they will come thing. This is a build it and it'll help you. Yes. It'll help your on-field product, I assume.
I would think that football is a little bit more of a on campus in the South is probably your bigger draw, right? Traditionally than bad. So even without, but I think you'd obviously want better play on the field. So it seems like this is the right time, even like just financially, it seems like a good time to be doing it. If you are, I'm not an economist, but I think if you are expecting any type of inflation, you'd rather be in assets than cash during inflationary times, because your payments are basically less because the dollar's worth less. So could be an interesting time to do some big projects and stuff like that. Go get some debt. It's cheap. Build some stuff. And then I think the other part of it is just on the financial side is Michael Kelly said during the Board of Trustees meeting, just the difference in revenue sharing guarantee,
Mm-hmm.
$20 million, I think he said is the lowest. So, if you can make up that, if this stadium helps you get to that level, then you start to make up that the stadium starts to pay for itself within, potentially a decade or so. If that stadium helped you get into one of those bigger guaranteed conferences, right? So right. There's that too. That's the other side of it. So it seems to be a really, really good time to be exploring this. And I think they've got some smart people at leading this charge. So it certainly seems now that it's really, would you guys agree that it's a lot more now really a matter of when and not a matter of if, or do you guys still think it's a matter of if?
I don't even think there's an if at this point. I think it's a win, especially with how adamant
It seems that way, right?
the board of trustees has been. Because normally in years past, it's been like, oh yeah, like put together a presentation and we'll kind of see what it looks like at the end of the day for you guys. Thanks for stopping by, Michael Kelly or Mark Harlan or whoever, and just fuck off and go back to being a bad football team. I think now you're kind of seeing, and to point at the elephant in the room, for UCF to be chosen to go to the Big 12 over USF, kind of probably put up a wake-up call for most of these board of trustee members, because now you're realizing that that's money left on the table that, with proper investing done in the past, pays its dividends. And these guys are businessmen. They know how these ROIs work, especially when it comes to collegiate football. You put together a strong enough program. You don't even have to have a winning team. You can just have a good enough team with an on-campus stadium and investment into your football facility, and then boom, you get a brand new TV deal with much more money coming in for athletics, and you have more flexibility for the board of trustees to basically spend more money and do more fun things that the school needs to have happen. And you can kind of lean into more, not just athletic adventures, but academic adventures as well. So I think that this was kind of done, like, I hate to say it, this was done because they needed to do it. Will Weatherford or whoever else in the board of trustees probably felt very embarrassed that USF was not included in the Big 12 expansion. And this is them saying, all right, we fucked up. Here's how we're fixing it. And that's the biggest consolation prize I could ever get, is them acknowledging the mistake. Actually, they didn't even acknowledge the mistake. Them at least trying to fix the mistake.
Right. And I think what you're seeing, I think that the head of the presidential search committee, Mike Griffin, he throws one of the best football tailgates that I've ever been to. He knows the importance of athletics, and that really helps. That this search committee is more athletic centric than probably ever. And I think you're going to see a president who puts, athletics not as the top priority. Don't get it twisted. USF still has aspirations to be an AAU school, which will open other conference doors. If it's not the Big 12, if it's not the ACC, I know the Big 10 are pretty adamant. And if you're joining this conference, you need to be an AAU school. I think Big 10 is obviously a pipe dream, but they still want to go in that step. And I think just putting athletics maybe closer to where academics is compared to where it was under Judy Genscheft. And I mean, you wasted a year and a half with Steve Carell. Let's be real here.
Carell.
So that's just get them closer. AAU Jackadong. It's the American
Mr. Donkey.
It's like the academic. American Academic University, whatever it's like these top tier research.
Is it the American Association of Universities?
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah, we're good academic, like basically saying we're one of the top academic research institutions in the country. It's a very stringent membership that the school is going for, and for example, it pays its dividends elsewhere because the Big 10 only accept schools that are in AAU status. They don't to join the Big 10. You got to be good. You got to invest in your athletics, and you got to be investing in your academics. That's why they took Rutgers.
Association of American Universities, only 64 members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in
the United States.
The first step was to become preeminent, and that's what USF did. The next step is AAU status, and I assure you that's still one of their top goals. Just bringing athletics closer to one of their top goals is going to prove vital. I mean, you see it right now, getting the football facility upgraded with a $20 million upgrade, getting the indoor facility started, actually having timelines for an on-campus stadium. And Seth, to your question earlier, is it if or when? It's a when. When this was announced, I was told butts and seats 2026. Michael Kelly yesterday said the aggressive timeline is 2026, more realistic 2027. And that is perfectly fine. It's in line with what I've heard since September 5th. this is a win thing now, and USF really does like to play their cards close to their chest a lot of the time. So the radio silence wasn't taken lightly by a lot of people who, thought it was a PR tactic. And I get it. You go basically, 3 months without saying a word about it, or, just cryptic stuff. It's tough for the common USF fan who has been burned in the past to be like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to do this when there's been nothing. But I think this administration, interim president Rhea Law, has done a phenomenal job kind of being at the forefront of this. I don't think she has said that she doesn't want the job, but she's done a hell of a job kind of steering USF toward this next president, whoever it is, and has really been a proponent for athletics as well. And then Michael Kelly, obviously, and Jeff Scott, obviously, really pushing this forward, as well as the board of trustees, having those people who care about athletics. Will Weatherford, played high school football, played college football. He played at JU, right?
I don't know. Is his brother Drew Weatherford?
It is.
Played at Florida State, so football family.
I think they went to Land O'Lakes. I think all of them went to Land O'Lakes, if I'm not mistaken.
The Land O'Lakes Gators.
Yeah. So just having those people who care about athletics while also maintaining the AAU status, or getting to the AAU status, is going to be vital. So it's a step in the right direction. And, I definitely understand why people were a little hesitant and skeptical about maybe this is just kind of trying to distract from what happened at NC State, what, happened like 2 weeks prior. I mean, it was a confluence of events that, really made people skeptical about this. But it seems like everything's kind of heading in the right direction. And, on to bigger and better things, right? Is there any final thoughts? I'll open it up to the chat. Is there anything that we haven't discussed tonight? I know I said a nice tight hour before we went live, and here we are, an hour, 16 minutes later.
Every time you say to keep it within an hour, we go well past.
I know, man.
A lot of news.
There was a lot of news.
Jack, don't do that to me. I've suffered enough this year.
Steeg is a Jags fan, so.
Could you imagine my weekend going from that Tulane game to the Jags just absolutely just laying a fucking egg against the Falcons? That was great.
Was it unexpected?
No, well, the USF one was I mean, I was like, oh, just cover Kyle Pitts, you'll be fine, and then they didn't.
None, they didn't.
Made Matt Ryan look like a fucking Super Bowl MVP again.
Yeah. But I think that's it. We'll have we're trying to figure out logistics for next week. Do we want to do the primer the day before, the day of? Maybe we'll do the day of. I'll talk with my colleagues here, see what the hive mind thinks. But yeah, exhilarating stuff. It's exciting to talk about some positive things for a change. I know, it's really out of the hate blogs norm. I hope this wasn't, too drunk frat guy for you guys. But I hope we were informative and shared some things. Ooh, Daniel Chapman coming in the buzzer. Steger.
Great question.
The Tulane tight end commit that we're referencing here is DeCarlo Donaldson. He's from Gulliver Prep. That is the same school that Gabe Neely came from. To put this lightly, Jeff Scott, Bob Shupe, Xavier Dye, and Charlie Weiss Jr. were all at Donaldson's house this evening, visiting him. A week before early signing day. I believe he's going on a visit to West Virginia this weekend as well. So
I believe so.
So they're putting a full court press on him. I know we just got Jason Littlejohn from College of the Sequoias as a tight end, but I think they're looking for another tight end. They're really looking at Donaldson. I don't think USF puts a full court press on someone unless they really, really think that they're going to get him.
Is he too big for receiver? Because I've seen him listed receiver as well.
He's kind of like he's your,
is he like a Willis?
No, he's more like a Tyree McCants, to be honest. He's a little
Okay.
bit of a thick boy.
Thick daddy.
I love my double C thick boys.
Yeah, he's a little thick boy. So I mean, if you want chances, I'd say chances that we flip him, I would probably say like 40% right now. I think 40% that he goes to USF, 60% he goes to Tulane. Willie Fritz is working his magic on him. So that'd be a huge recruiting win. That would skyrocket our high school recruiting class, which is looks weird because we took 2 JUCO guys and a prep school guy, so it's gonna look weird. But that's a guy that I think we could kind of hang our hat on as well as Eddie Kelly this year. So I'd say 40% right now. That could change by tomorrow.
That's the crystal Steeg crystal ball. 40%.
40%. If it gets to 80%, I go ahead and pre-write it, but I haven't pre-written it yet.
You didn't talk about it earlier, Steeg. Talk about this. Brian Battie, All-American.
Yes. The recognition he so rightfully deserves. Thank you to 247 Sports. I don't know who does those All-American ballots or anything like that, but yeah, Brian Battie listed as second team All-American for kick returning. First team All-American. I don't remember who it is because it wasn't Marcus Jones. Marcus Jones got first team all purpose charge or something like that. Yeah. Something weird, but second team All-American, which I don't remember the last. Did we? When was the last time we had an All-American listed anywhere?
I mean, it's probably Marlon Mack, Quentin Flowers, maybe Rodney or MVS 2017. I would assume.
I don't know because it's been a while since we've had an All-American honoree in anything.
You're right. You're right.
So that's big.
941 area code guys, man. Me, Marlon Mack, Brian Battie, we're all just super explosive.
Built different.
That's right.
Built
and I mean,
different.
Within a Timmy McClain led offense next year, you've got so many speed guys coming in between Caffrey Brown, Brian Battie. You get a guy like Michael Dukes in the slot.
Let's get those guys a lot of touches.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do these complex, RPO developing plays or anything like that. You just got to find a way to get the ball in their hands one-on-one because I guarantee that starting 5, of Battie, Horn, Weaver, Brown, and I can't remember the 5th one because I've said it too quickly, but I guarantee that starting 5 skill player set could probably beat 90% of the American one-on-one.
Yeah.
I think one thing, if they're not going to just think about next year, I think we talked about option stuff would be interesting if they add elements, but also getting these backs out in routes more often and not just flare routes or getting them matched up one-on-one with linebackers and giving them space to work with option routes and angle routes and stuff like that and let them catch the ball on the run. I think you could have something there, but there's stuff that needs to be added to the offense, but hopefully second year of a quarterback, you add that. And then guys like Brian Battie can show those all-American skills, on offense, and they get some more touches. So
absolutely, I think you've seen more recently over the last couple of years. The halfback angle route has been absolutely killer against defenses. I think that's just another thing that you can add to this offensive repertoire because you've got the backs and talent to do so. All of them have great feet, and I think it starts with having good feet at the running back position, running those kind of routes. I think they'll all kind of be natural in that regard, and they're all quick enough to burst a 8-yard gain into a 20-yard gain.
Yes.
So it's gonna be. I think you'll see more wrinkles as we head into 2022. Lord willing, Charlie Weiss, doesn't abandon something if it doesn't work one time. I think that's been his issue, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. But as we wrap up here, again, shout out to Brian Battie, second team All-American.
There was one more question. I don't know if you can tell me if this would be better addressed next week, but asked a couple times, how many these guys transferring in? Who do you think are going to be the biggest impact guys, and maybe who's coming in probably to start right away?
Short. Let's do short answer, and we'll expand on it
next week. Or after they're in officially.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah,
all of them are coming in to take spots.
Yeah,
there you go.
All of them. For Seth, Steeg, Nathan. This has been another episode of the Bulluminati podcast, proudly presented by Home Field Apparel. Make sure you guys go to homefieldapparel.com. 15% off for first-time users with the code Daily Stampede. Again, that's Daily Stampede, and it works site-wide. They've got 6 different USF shirts. Very comfortable. It's the most comfortable shirts I've ever worn. Samantha continues to steal them. Steeg, you're now living with your girlfriend. She is going to be stealing your shirts if she hasn't started already, and they will be heavily in the rotation, which is unfortunate for us, especially for me, because Samantha has the tendency to spill things on shirts frequently. She is a very clumsy woman, but I love her. So, sometimes my shirts will come back stained, and I just have to kind of sit and live with it. But, I mean, look at those shirts. Beautiful shirts. The script Bulls is fantastic. I've got the classic USF writing and the gray one, and then also the Robo Bull, of course. The hoodie's fantastic. Again, 15% off your order for first-time users site-wide when you use the promo code Daily Stampede. Get your orders in now for Christmas. It's probably a little too late for them to show up, but hey, New Year's gift is still a gift, guys.
That's right.
And maybe if we buy enough, there might be a second launch.
Maybe. But again, shout out to Home Field for hooking us up. It's been a fun episode. My Wi-Fi hasn't crapped out yet. So let's end it on a high note. For Seth, for Steeg, this is Nathan signing off with another great episode of the Bulluminati podcast. Go Bulls, be safe.
Go Bulls.